Welcome. My name is Nate Converse. I'm a farm business management instructor working out of Central Lakes College. Going to spend a few minutes today just kind of going through the livestock data from the 2021 farm business management data. And here we're looking at, just want to show you where you can find more information on that if you need it. agcentric.org is the place, and you kind of scroll through there, find the farm business management tab, and go down to the 2021 annual reports, and you should be able to find a lot more data there if you're interested. So first thing we're going to do is take a look at dairy and just kind of this note here in terms of how we separate organic, just because of the cost structures and pricing received. So dairy, the next few slides will not have organic in it, but don't worry, we'll get to that later. So first thing I want to go through is just the average number of cows on the average farm, obviously. We can see that number just keeps increasing year by year, similar to what we see in the statewide data. Looking at milk production per cow, again, we see a little bit of an increase there last year, 25,285, up from just under 25,000 in 2020. Looking at 20-year net returns per cow, this is before owner-operator labor management. 20-year average is right about $416 per cow net return. Last year came in a little bit under that at just about $208. Looking at our milk price received, this would be mailbox price received by the farm. 10-year average is $18.90 last year, a little bit under that at $18.41, and down from $19.77 received in 2020. Now we're going to take a look at our cost and gross margin per hundredweight. So we have three groups here. We have the average group, kind of the mid-range group, and then our high return group. So you can see feed cost decreases. We get to the high return group down at $8.68 compared to $9.59 on average. We have our direct in there. Direct includes our feed, labor, vet, breeding cost, DHA, hauling and trucking, kind of all those expenses that are directly correlated to the dairy. And again, we can see that we're at $12.34 in the high return group, so a little bit better in terms of cost compared to our average at $14.38. There are overheads in there, coming at $16.17 total compared to $17.07 on that average group. And then net return, some pretty substantial differences there. So net return includes our milk price, adds in our cold cow sales and bulk calves. Then we'll subtract out for inventory change, or subtract or add for inventory change, and subtract for our dairy replacement net cost. We look at a 3-year view on this, comparing 2019 to 20 and 21. Let's see if feed costs have increased steadily over the last 3 years. That follows through on our direct costs, our direct and overhead. I think gross margin, pretty variable between the 3 years, with 2020 being kind of our banner year there. We're just going to take a real quick look at some of the data by size of herd. So this just represents the total farms in the database. So last year, there were 276 farms that reported data to the Farm Business Management Database. Gives us a breakdown of where those farms sit in terms of herd size. So 85 of those farms, for example, would have been that 100 to 200 cow range, 37 in that large herd greater than 500 cow range. This just shows our herd size and milk production. So these are the smaller herds down here at up to 50 cows, average 38 cows per herd, milk production 17,000 pounds. We can see that milk production increases as we grow in herd size. Now we're going to take a look at our net return by herd size. So starting with the 50 cow or less group, all the way up to the greater than 500 cow here on the right side. Feed cost, you can see a decrease in feed costs as herd size grows. That translates pretty closely into our feed with direct and overhead. So this will be total cost. Now we're going to add in something for the owner-operator labor. So here again, we see on the 500 cow range, we're at $17.28 total with owner-operator compared to $18.57 in the 50 to 100 cow range. And then gross margin. As we scroll across the top, we can see $17.77 for the smaller herds compared to 1752 for the large in this middle group range, kind of in the higher area at 1842, 1820, and 1830 gross margin per hundredweight. This just shows a little bit more detailed breakdown of our labor cost and our labor structure. So this bottom tan yellowish piece here is a total hired labor per hundredweight, and the gray part would be the portion that is attributed to the owner-operator labor. So that should represent the valuation for the owner-operator's time and management. And as you'd expect, the smaller herds are mostly owner-operator based at $2.15 per hundred owner-operator and only 41 cents hired. And as we go larger, that number obviously shifts to when we get to the larger herds at over 500 cows, we're looking at $2.40 per hundred hired labor on average, and only 43 cents per hundred labor management charge. This slide just looks at the term debt coverage ratio trend, comparing the smaller. This one is based on gross farm income. So these would be the herds that are generating more than $2 million gross farm income compared to the herds that are generating 100,000 to 250,000 gross farm income. This just kind of gives you the breakdown there. Average term debt coverage last year was 1.88. Lowest on our smaller farms. Kind of this mid-range group actually did the best. Those are in the 500,000 to 1 million. And large herds did pretty well as well. Looking at our operating expense ratio trends. So again, this is our average, kind of our smaller farms compared to our large farms here. As you'd expect, operating expenses increase a little bit as we grow a little bit larger, as we have a little bit more hired labor and some other costs that come into play. Working capital is percent of gross income. So this blue line is percent of gross income. We can see kind of our mid-range herds actually did the best in this particular measure at 27.8% working capital gross income. A little bit lower as we get a little bit larger, and obviously as we get a fair amount smaller. Looking at our net worth change and our net worth. So as we'd expect, these larger farms obviously have a fair amount more net worth, and net worth change kind of tended to follow that trend a little bit last year. This slide just shows a few additional sorts. So we do have the ability to go within the data, and you can do this on FinBin as well. So there are herds that we tag as robotic. So I'm working with robotic equipment. Non-robotic traditional would be kind of what I think of as a conventional 2X herds. Non-robotic 3X milking would be a conventional dairy that's milking 3 times a day. Organic is just that. And then dairy initiatives, that's a program through Minnesota Department of Ag for Minnesota Dairy Initiatives. So number of farms is represented on the top here. Probably just a few key pieces of data. Obviously, milk production per cow averaged about 25,000 pounds last year. The robotic dairy and 3X herds are a little bit better than that. And non-robotic traditional and dairy initiatives we're pretty close to average. And as we'd expect, organic dairy, a little bit less production, but a little bit better price here if we get down to the bottom with the average milk price. You can see that trend as well. Organics did a fair amount better in terms of milk price. If we look at this blue line in the middle, that shows our net return. As we just kind of scroll across there, organic dairy had the best net return. This is before owner-operated labor management, followed by 3X milking last year. Now we get into just a little bit of our organic dairy. So this shows net return per cow on organic farms. Last year was relatively stable between 2020 and 2021. Last year it came in at $634 per cow compared to $627 in 2020. Looking at organic milk price, so the milk price received on organic farms. Milk price is down a little bit last year at $28.59 from $29.50 the year before. Herd size, organic dairies tend to stay more consistent in terms of herd size. So you can see the 10-year trend here, 94 cows in 2012, fluctuated a little bit throughout the past 10 years, but still at about 94 cows per farm in 2021. pounds of milk per cow on organic farms. So we do see a trend there with an increase. Last year, average milk production was 16,131 pounds. That's up from 14,194 in 2020. Okay, that covers our dairy section. We have a little bit information here on the beef cow calf enterprise. So first thing we're going to look at is net returns per cow. Down last year, the average net return was negative $166 per cow. It was $6 in 2020. Looking at our cost production. So again, we're looking at that high, mid, and average groups. So this would be feed cost per cow. You can see some substantial savings here in our high return group. That kind of follows through as we add the direct costs in there. And again, as we add some overheads in, gross margin, pretty substantial difference in our high return group compared to our average and our mid group. This high return group's doing a fair better job of getting a better gross margin. If we look at this based on herd size, we average be up to 50 cows, 50 to 100, 100 to 200, and 2 to 500. So feed cost, again, similar to what we saw in the dairy, feed cost decreases as herd size increased. That in this case also transfers through to lower direct expenses as herd size increases. Direct and overhead, 780 for our larger herds compared to 1,083 for the smaller herds. And gross margin, again, pretty significant difference in terms of gross margin. Average gross margin last year, 826. A little bit lower in our small herds at 794 and 815 in our larger herds. We're going to take a quick look here at beef cow calf with and without backgrounding. So without, would be a producer that weaned the calf and shortly sells it. If they choose the with backgrounding sort, that is usually a producer that weans that calf, puts it in a feedlot for at least 30 days, just tries to add a little bit of size, a little bit of value that way. So as you'd expect, as we look at our feed cost, that number increases as we add that backgrounding sort in there. So again, these are producers that are holding on to that calf for a little bit longer period of time, so our feed cost should be higher. That transfers through to a $20 per cow higher direct cost. Direct and overhead, though, starts to average back out, where those two are pretty close together. And then gross margin, you can see we're looking at a fair amount better gross margin on those that select to background those calves than those that aren't or didn't last year. This just kind of shows our distribution in terms of, this would be the producers that don't background, average weaning weight, 572, average price per 100 pounds, $153.79. As you'd expect, with backgrounding, we're adding a little bit over 100 pounds there. That does bring our price down, but still, the net return was a little bit better. Do you have some information on sheep this year? So we're looking at on a per ewe basis, market land production, $191 feed cost per ewe. We had the direct in there, we're at $245, direct and overhead up to $327, and then gross margin comes in at $451, leaving a net return of $123 per ewe. Just a couple slides on beef and dairy finishing enterprise. So we can see here, price received is that red line, and green line is net return per hundredweight. Price received up a little bit last year, net return down. Most of that, as the slide demonstrates, is due to rising feed costs. So feed costs went up from $62.90 per hundred up to $83.14 last year. Beef finishing net return, $9.19 per hundred last year, up from $8.03 in 2020. Looking at average sales price along the top here, followed by feed costs right below it. And again, we see a pretty substantial increase in feed cost per hundred, up from 2020 was just under $60 per hundred, up to $80.83 per hundred. That obviously kind of keeps our net return, even though average sales price was better, our net return per hundredweight was pretty static between 2021 and 2020. Log in and price information. This will be finished feed of pigs. This is net return of price per pig. So price received per hundredweight of carcass is kind of that top line there. You can see price received obviously increased last year. That translates into higher price received per hundredweight of live hog. And net return, $4.88 in 2020, up a little bit to $5.21. All right, thank you for listening to this review. Again, if you find this information useful, more information similar to this can be found on the agcenter.org website or finbin.umn.edu. Thank you.